heaven is a place where
Mamie Till Mobley, the mother of Emmett Till, once said, 2 months ago, I had a nice apartment in Chicago. I had a good job. I had a son. Whenever something happened to Negroes in the South, I said, that's their business, not mine. Now, I know how wrong I was. The murder of my son has shown me that what happens to any of us anywhere in the world had better be the business of all of us.
I know who giving knowledge up there, Tupac. He looking down like what happened to this hip hop. Black heaven is a place where.
Here is another highly informative, raw audio segment with some very important information. Hopefully, you will gain a better understanding of a few more unanswered questions in your own life. Just by listening to this, we really appreciate you for letting John Henry Media Network assist in expanding your knowledge of self. Now, listen to this.
Looking at the blacks in the front seat, Bernie Mac joking right now, him and Richard Pryor.
Black history. According to the public school system, Negroes were brought to America in 1619, forced to work as slaves on plantations, until one day this great white man named Abraham Lincoln came along and felt bad for the slaves and signed the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863, which freed the slaves. But there were still some bad whiteys in the southern states that passed Jim Crow laws for segregation. Afterwards, there came more whites that felt bad and then gave blacks civil rights in the 1960s, then allowed a black man to have the presidential office named Barack Obama. Now blacks are finally equal to whites. We can all get along. The end. Now, moving right along to our English lecture for the day. I don't think so. Black history. What do you know about black history? Let me ask you a question. Prior to the transatlantic slave trade in the 1600s, what was your nationality? What did you call yourself? Some may say African. Well, Africa is a continent, and in that continent, there's over 47 different countries in there. Which one do you come from? What language did you speak prior to the 1600s? Was it English? There's over 1,500 dialects being spoken in the land of Africa. Pick one. What clothing did you wear? Was it high heels and stilettos? Skinny jeans and Vans? What food did you eat? Hamburgers and hot dogs? French fries and SpaghettiOs? What religion did you partake in? Who was your God? Was it Christianity and Cesare Borgia? Most of you have no idea about the answer to these questions. You have no recollection of any history prior to the transatlantic slave trade. Now, is that a coincidence or by random chance? I don't think so. Have you ever asked yourself, why is it that in the public school system that every time the subject of black history is taught, it always begins in the 1600s and with slavery? Why is that? Doesn't that raise some antennas and spark inquiry? Why is it that the public school system is so committed to revolving black history solely on the past 400 years? Why is that? Is it because there's a deficiency in historical data? Or maybe because there's no history at all prior to the 1600s. Maybe black people just poofed out of thin air, sporadically, landed on slave ships, and they said, hey, we got a new species here, and start importing and exporting them all over the world. Maybe that's what happened. The question arises, what is the drawback on this history? Why does it keep being withheld? What's the big idea about it? Why is it being held hostage? That's the question. Why can't it be expounded on? 100 years prior to the 1600s? 300 years? 500 years? 1,000 years? Why is that information not being revealed? What's the big secret? What's the mysticism about it? What you're going to come to realize is that your identity is the biggest kept secret on the planet Earth. Oh, you thought that NASA and the space station and the secret missions being conducted by them, oh, you thought that was the biggest kept secret on Earth. No, this is bigger than that. You thought that the government and the CIA and the FBI hiding information about UFOs and Planet X and Nibiru and aliens, you thought that was the biggest information and biggest kept secret. No, this is bigger than that. The elite Confederate has spent billions of dollars and constructed an innumerable amount of psychological stratagem to ensure that you never received and acquired this information that's about to be put out. You're about to receive pertinent information from some of the most reputable biblical scholars, historians, and archaeologists. And they all know something that you don't know. And that's your identity. Ham, the youngest son of Noah, born probably about 96 years before the flood, and one of 8 persons to live through the flood. He became the progenitor of the dark races, not the Negroes, but the Egyptians, Ethiopians, Libyans, and Canaanites. Wait, the churches and the pastors, which are set up by the government, all teach in unison a doctrine that all black people come from the seed of Ham. But once you open up scholastic sources, you'll find out that the biblical scholars say something totally different from what's taught in Orthodox Christianity. What do they mean by Ham is the father of the dark races but not the Negroes? The Negroes themselves are a dark race of people, so how can you say that Ham is the father of all these dark races and exclude the Negroes? What are the biblical scholars trying to convey? What the biblical scholars are saying is that you're not African. There's only 4 families according to the Bible that make up the native population of Africa, or the land of Ham. And the biblical scholars know that you don't descend from any one of those 4 families. In order to write that in a scholastic and academic book, the biblical scholars have done extensive and thorough research on both the so-called Negroes and the Africans, the native Africans. And they came to the conclusion after the extensive research that the Negroes don't have anything to do with the native Africans at all. They're 2 totally separate people. In the 1840s, Morton collaborated with George R. Gliddon, an Egyptologist, who provided him with mummy heads and information about the racial significance of Egyptian tomb inscriptions. In Crania Aegyptiaca, published in 1844, Morton pointed out that both cranial and archaeological evidence showed that the Egyptians were not Negroes. In 1840, Dr. Morton was trying to find out the racial origin of the so-called Negroes that were in America in slavery. So he got together with the Egyptologists, which supplied him with the mummy heads, and what he did was conduct an extensive research on the cranial remains of the heads in Egypt, in contrast to the cranial remains of the heads in America. And what he found out is that the Negroes that were in slavery were not Africans. He found out that the skulls were 2 totally different types of skulls. The Negro's head was longer than the Egyptian head. The physical characteristics from the outside look similar, with the thick lips and the broad nose. But once you start delving into the real characteristics, he found out that there were 2 totally different people. As abolitionists and colonizationists had maintained, and that in fact, blacks had been relegated to the same servile position in ancient Egypt as in modern America. But what Dr. Morton did discover is that the Negroes that were serving slavery in America served the same position in servitude in ancient Egypt when they matched other skulls and other cranial remains in Egypt. They said these are exact matches. So what are the scholars saying? What you're going to find out is that they're saying that you are the biblical Israelites. Yes, you're the same exact people that served slavery in the land of Egypt. You're the same exact people that God sent Moses to go redeem under the hand of Pharaoh. You're the same exact people. And when you read the Bible, you'll find out that slavery is a central theme in the Bible. It's a reoccurring theme with the Israelites. The Israelites cannot run away and get away from serving slavery. It continues to happen over and over, all the way up until today. You came out of Egypt as slaves, came down into the land of Israel. No sooner as you got there, then you had the Assyrians come, capture the land of Israel, and take you and make you slaves. In the 9th year of Hoshea, the king of Assyria took Samaria and carried Israel away into Assyria. You came out of the land of Assyria, went back to the land of Israel. Then the Babylonians came, which are the modern day Ethiopians, the Cushites, came to the land of Israel and made you slaves. So all Israel were reckoned by genealogies. And behold, they were written in the book of the kings of Israel and Judah, who were carried away to Babylon for their transgression. You came out of the Babylonian captivity, went back to the land of Israel. Then the Persians came on down there, took the Israelites and made you slaves. For we were bondmen, yet our God hath not forsaken us in our bondage, but hath extended mercy unto us in the sight of the kings of Persia. You came back from the Persian Medo captivity, went back to the land of Israel, rebuilt the temple up. Then the Greeks came on down there, took you and made you slaves, to entreat them that they would take the yoke from them. For they saw that the kingdom of the Grecians did oppress Israel with servitude. After you came from the Greek captivity, you went back into the land of Israel, rebuilt the temple because the Greeks were sacrificing swine and pig on the altars. No sooner as you came back to the land of Israel, then the Romans came and had you during the time of Christ as slaves. It was so much slavery going on with the Israelites that Jeremiah himself had to ask, is Israel just put on earth just to be slaves? Is that your whole purpose? Just to be servitude to other nations? Is Israel a servant? Is he a homeborn slave? Why is he spoiled? So you might be asking yourself, if the so-called Negro is part of the 12 tribes of Israel, how in the world did you get to the west coast of Africa? And when ye shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies, then know that the desolation thereof is nigh. This is Christ right here speaking to the Israelites. He says, when you see Jerusalem compassed or surrounded by the Roman armies, then know that the desolation or the destruction of the land of Israel is getting ready to happen. The Romans getting ready to come in here and tear some stuff up. Then let them which are in Judea flee to the mountains, and let them which are in the midst of it depart out. And Christ says, when you see the Romans coming in, you better get ready to flee into the mountains. And what you're going to realize is that the mountains that he was talking about was the land of Africa. It was the same exact place that Mary and Joseph took Jesus when they were fleeing from Herod when he was trying to come find Jesus to kill him. They went right into Africa. And the Israelites went into Africa as well, fleeing from the Romans. In the year 65 BC, the Roman armies under General Pompey captured Jerusalem. In 70 AD, General Vespasian and his son Titus